So thanks everybody for joining again. And for those folks who have been with us for the last couple webinars, kind of working our way backwards from some of the different examples that Chantilly has designed and then walked through over the last couple of webinars. So what we're going to do today is review some of the concepts that can be applied to pretty much any use case and dashboard that she's defined. And you may have seen it before at Tableau Conference. So again, Mike Rooney here, Head of Sales at Lovelytics, and of course joined by Chantilly Jaggernauth, VP of Training and Visualizations here. Again, quick plug for Lovelytics, Tableau Services and Partner in DC. And then, right, our goal for the day is let's keep it simple and hand it over to Chantilly to walk us through everything that she's built so far. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Make sure that Chantilly is able to get going.
All right, Mike. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome everyone, wherever you're at. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I am Chantilly Jaggernauth, and today I'll walk you all through design secrets for a non-designer. And I titled this one the Business Edition, particularly because last year I gave this talk at the Tableau conference, and I focused on a lot of different dashboards that I've created personally. So today's session, I want to focus on the business dashboards that I've created as the VP of Data Visualization at Lovelytics. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce myself as a non-designer, right? I don't consider myself a designer at all. And I'll explain to you a little bit why. We'll start with my journey, right? So these are my first Tableau dashboards charts that I've ever created. I started learning Tableau about 2010, 2011, while I was at Howard University, and my professor gave me an assignment that contained a bunch of data and said, make sense of this data. And at that point, I only knew how to use Excel. And if you tried to open up this data set in Excel, it would crash your computer because it was 1,000,000 records plus. So that night I learned two things. One, that Excel was trash, and that two, Tableau was this tool that could really help me knock out my assignment. I turned to Google, I found Tableau, downloaded it. It was free for students at that time. Put the data into it, and I was able to create these visualizations that I was actually very proud of, and hand in my assignment and present it to the professor the next day. So these were the very first charts that I created. You see, I didn't even take off the sheet 4 name at the top, but I wanted to show you all this because this is where I started. And throughout my journey, I've never had any formal design training. I hadn't had any graphic design training. I never really even had fully like a full Tableau training. So I want to show you all how I'm able to create some of these personal visualizations today, as well as some of these business visualizations today, and what were the steps that got me there. So today, hopefully you'll see how I went from the chart that you see on the left-hand side to the dashboard that you see on the right-hand side. So what are those secrets? One, I'll talk you all through how to gather requirements. We'll go into how to create a template. We'll talk about using icons and art to your advantage. I'll hit on choosing colors that matter and why colors really matter with your dashboards. And then we'll end it talking about fonts. So let's go ahead and get started. Gathering requirements. Requirements are the most significant part of any visualization and any dashboard that you're creating. Essentially, you typically don't start a visualization project without having your requirements from your end users. So the first thing that you want to do when you get these requirements is you want to understand the overall goal of the project. What is your end user looking to get out of this? Second, you want to make sure that you're understanding your audience's analytical maturity, right? So is the end user very familiar with Tableau, or have they never heard of it? Are they looking to maybe have an image of this, or are they looking to interact with it? You want to gauge your audience's analytical maturity because it's going to represent exactly how you should create this dashboard and some of the functionality that it should have behind the scenes. Next, you want to start to think about your end users' preferences. What are some of the things that they're looking to have in terms of colors, logos, size, and things like that? So you want to make sure you get that pretty early on, and I'll walk you through exactly why. Next, you want to make sure that you refine and prioritize any business questions that they have. Typically, when I'm presented with a new dashboard project or a new visualization project, there are a long list of questions that the end user has that they want to use data to answer. And essentially, sometimes you cannot answer all 20 to 30 of their questions, right? You have to hone in on the 10 questions that they really want to get answered out of this dashboard. So you want to make sure that you're refining and prioritizing your business questions very early on. Next, you want to complete a high-level data discovery. This is because if you are given a dashboard project and your user has 10 different requirements, you want to make sure that you have the data to answer or to knock off those requirements. You want to make sure that the data is readily available, or if there is any data manipulation work that needs to be done, you want to make sure that you know that very early on. And then last but not least, you can then determine some of the views that are going to be needed to answer these questions. So are they looking for a text table? Are they looking for a bar chart? Are they looking for trends to look at information over time? So the first thing you want to do whenever you're given a new project, and it's typically what I do in the consulting world, is you want to lay out all of the requirements. You want to follow some of these requirement guidelines. So to put all of that together, I've created a dashboard requirements document, and I'll share with you all at the end of this how you can access this document for free and download it and use it on your own. There are two parts of this dashboard requirements document. The left-hand side outlines information about the dashboard itself, right? So the name of it, the goal of it, and then the estimated completion date. Then you have information about your audience itself, which goes into detail about who is this? Who is the dashboard intended for? Is it an executive, a manager, an analyst, or is it for the public? Typically, if you are creating a dashboard for an executive, that same dashboard wouldn't necessarily be used for an analyst. An analyst may be very familiar with Tableau, whereas an executive is probably looking for like screenshots to pop into a presentation or something along that nature. So you want to make sure that you understand your audience's analytical maturity. 3, you want to select the display mode. I think this is very important because there have been times where I've created a dashboard that might have been all floating or might have been sized one way, and then the client comes back and says, hey, can we adjust the size? Now, if you have an all floating dashboard, it's a little difficult to maneuver those pieces, and it's going to require a lot of time to adjust those bits and pieces that are on the dashboard. So I think it's very important that you understand how your end user is intending to display this, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, or a mobile, because that's also going to help you understand exactly how long of a process this is going to be in order to create that dashboard. Next, you want to know, is it going to be intended to be used on the web as a PDF, a PowerPoint, and an image? And this goes hand in hand kind of with your display mode. If it's on the web, then typically you can allow your dashboard to scroll, right? You can scroll up and down, you can scroll horizontally on a dashboard that's on a web. Versus if it's on a PDF, you want to make sure that your dashboard can fit to print. If it's on a PowerPoint, you want to make sure that your dashboard can be exported to a nice scalable PowerPoint slide. And the same thing with an image. You want to make sure that the information that is within the image is scalable as well. And then last but not least, number 5 on the dashboard requirements on the left-hand side, you want to make sure that you're incorporating any dashboard filters and additional notes. So what are some logos that you would like on here, some icons, some colors, and things like that. So that's your dashboard requirement, information about the overall dashboard itself. Then the document that you see on the right-hand side focuses on the worksheet. So I consider every single requirement a worksheet. So if you want to look at sales over time, that's one worksheet, and I would use this view requirement on the right hand side to analyze and start to get more information about what you want that view or that one worksheet to look like. So we'll start with the view name itself. You can say like sales over time, provide a high level description of it, and then you'll get into the details about the fields that are going to be needed in order to create this view. So if we're looking at sales over time, you're going to have some form of a date dimension, and then whatever your measure is that you're looking at over time, you plot that as your primary measure. Now, if you want to look at this by each of the regions and have several lines for each region, then you'll probably add an additional dimension as a region. Next, you'll go down into the notes in the calculation section. So if sum of sales isn't as straightforward, then you want to make sure that you get that from your end user. How do we calculate sales? Is it a particular field that we need to look at? So you want to make sure that you know the extent of all of the fields that are going to be used within your visualization. Next, formatting. Do you want to highlight the top months? Do you want to highlight the max or the min, the line beginning or the line end? You want to understand that up front as well. Should there be any filters applied to this? Do we only want to look at sales within the year of 2018, so on and so forth? And then in terms of the data source and additional notes, you just want to have information about how to access the data source and does the end user intend to or would like to display this in a particular chart type? So do they want to see this as a bar chart instead of a line chart for trend over time? Or do they want to see it as a standard text table? And that's typically information that I will put in the additional notes section. So let's walk through an example of how I would use this on a day-to-day basis. The VP of sales wants to keep track of sales generated within the company. Overall, he or she wants to know how much each region brings in and which segment generates the most revenue for each region. Currently, this information is provided in an Excel workbook and shows sales per category, sales per segment, monthly sales, and the number of orders. And here's an example of what that looks like, right? This you can't update. It's a very manual process. It's hard to share out with the regional leads. So essentially the VP is looking to take this information and place it into a Tableau dashboard. In order to create that dashboard, we've listed out some of the questions that the VP specifically wants to answer. So which subcategories have the highest sales? What are the sales per region over time? What are the sales profit and profit ratio for each region? What are the sales per state? And which segment and region have the highest sales? Pretty straightforward, right? So we're going to take each of these requirements and plug it into that document just so I can show you what it will look like. So on the left-hand side, we've taken the overall goal of the dashboard and we placed that in section number 1. Section number 2, we specified that the VP of sales is going to be our main audience for this, as well as the regional lead. So here we have the executive and management. We didn't include any of the sales analysts on this. Next, our display mode, we've indicated it as a laptop, and we specify specifically exactly how this laptop should be sized, how this dashboard should be sized on a laptop, 1100 by 1000. Next, the intended use case for it is a web as well as a PDF, a printable version. And then down below, we have information related to the dashboard filters, the company colors, and then a sample of what this dashboard could look like based off of a link that the VP saw on Tableau Public. Now, on the right-hand side, I've taken one of those questions that provided information or asked about order, sales, profit, and profit ratio for each region, and I've created the view requirement document. So this view, we're going to call it metric details per region. The dimensions that are needed and the measures that are needed in order to create this will be your region as your primary dimension, your customers, order, sales, profit, and profit ratios as your primary measures. In order to calculate orders, we've provided the details on the orders, the customers, and the profit ratio. So customers will be the count distinctive customer ID. We're getting very particular with exactly how some of these calculations should be. Orders is count distinctive order ID. Profit ratio is profit divided by sales. In terms of formatting and filters, we don't have any additional information that we need for this chart. And for the data source and the additional notes, we've listed out exactly where this data can be accessed, right? The source, the username, and then the password is sent separately via email. And then last but not least, the chart type that the end user would like to see this as is a standard text table. So if we take each of those requirements that you saw on the previous screen, we place it into this document, you have about 6 different view requirements, so one for each worksheet that you need to build. And then when you place it all together, you have about 7 different sheets that now consist of all of the ins and outs that are needed in order to create this dashboard. So this is step 1 for me, right? Creating requirements, documenting, outlining everything that the end user is looking for before I even get into Tableau or creating any type of visualization. So next, once you have your requirements, the next step for me is to create a template. I never go right into Tableau. I never start creating charts right away. I always start with creating a template. So let's look at some of the things that go into that, right? So once you've analyzed your data and you determine the insight that you would like to convey to your audience, create a grid-like template to help you organize your thoughts. So first, with your template, you want to make sure that you're prioritizing your requirements. Only use what's important. So if we go back to the example that I showed you all earlier, we take each of those questions. I've listed each of those questions in terms of order of priority. So first, the user would like to see the overall number of customers, orders, sales, and profit. Next, the user would like to see the monthly sales per region, the metric details per region, the region segment sales, the sales per state, and last but not least, the sales per subcategory. So we took all of those questions that were out of order and we placed them in order of priority. Next, you want to use blank text boxes or pen and paper to sketch this out. I use a series of tools. I use pen and paper. I use Tableau, blank text boxes within Tableau. I use Figma, which I can show you all. And I also use Balsamic, which is a wireframing tool. There are a lot of tools that can help you sketch out your template and start to think about where you want to lay stuff out. So first, I'll show you all how I do this in Tableau. So you take a blank text box and you place it into a dashboard, right? You connect to your data source because in order to start creating anything in Tableau, you have to have some sort of data connection, but you don't need to create any of your worksheets to create this view. You simply just create a new dashboard, you size it accordingly, and then you lay it out using blank text boxes, which are dashboard objects located on the bottom left-hand side of your dashboard. And you place them on the dashboard. And within each of those blank text boxes, you want to place in what this placeholder is going to represent. So here we have each of the filters up top. Here we have each of the bands or the large numbers and what they're going to display. And next we get into information about the chart itself. So this section here is going to relate to the details per region. We have the monthly sales per region, and we specify that it's going to be a line chart. We have the metric details per region, and we specify that that's going to be a text table. We have the region segment sales, a highlight table, the sales per state, and then we have the sales per subcategory, and that's a bar chart. So I've added borders to this just so that I can see exactly how this dashboard should be outlined and making sure that I'm designing to a grid as I create this template. From there, you want to make sure you're designing to a grid. And as you can see here, this is a 5-chart grid. On the right-hand side, you can see that your top and your bottom charts are aligned, right? If you think about reading a newspaper or a magazine, everything is pretty much laid out to a grid. It's a design principle to allow your users to read information and consume it in a grid-like format. It's the easiest format that users are able to consume information in. So here, I made sure that I'm snapping the right-hand corners and I'm aligning them. So this was what I would consider a 5-chart grid. Here, a 4-chart grid is a little bit easier because you have like an even width. So it's easier to align these charts horizontally. So you have chart 1, chart 2, chart 3, and chart 4. And then here we have a 3-chart grid where your chart on the left-hand side is probably your highest priority, followed by chart 2 and chart 3 on the right-hand side. So these are examples of some grids that I've created in Tableau. Next, you want to start to incorporate bands and add context to that. So bands are big angry numbers, or you could substitute the A with whatever you please, but essentially bands provide information about your dashboard. And typically, because you're summarizing some type of metric on your dashboard, you want to place that at the top. So your users are reading your dashboard top to bottom, left to right. So bands, as they're providing summary information, aggregated information, you want to make sure that they're very prominent on your dashboard. So I typically place my bands either on the very top of the dashboard or on the left-hand side. So here's an example of a left-sided band, right? You never want to place your bands on the right-hand side or at the bottom. As I mentioned, your users read top to bottom, left to right. So you want to make sure that these bands are prominent and that your users are reading them first before they get into the details. It's like an introduction to me before you get to the body of a paragraph. Next, you'll use size and position to show hierarchy. And we do this by taking each of the priorities, each of the points that were prioritized by our client, and then we plug it into our dashboard. So at the very top is where you're going to have your highest priority item. So they want to look at the sales, the orders, the customers, and the profit as a high level. So that's priority number 1. And we want to make sure that that's at the very top of our dashboard. Then we take each of those points, those additional points, and we'll lay them out, as I mentioned, top to bottom, left to right. So here you have point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, and point 6. What you don't want to do is have a high priority item, say for instance, monthly sales per region. You don't want to have that at the bottom right-hand corner of your dashboard. Make sure that you're using size and position to show hierarchy. Make sure you're going back to your priorities, your list of priorities, and organizing your dashboard according to it. And last but not least, you want to start to think about icons and use of color. So in this example, on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, excuse me, I placed the company logo in the top right-hand corner. And that's typically where I keep logos at. I don't place it in the center. I typically don't place it on the left-hand side because I like my title aligned on the left-hand side. So I'll place the logo on the right. And then in terms of icons, if I have a band on my dashboard, I'll incorporate a nice icon with it. And we'll go into details about icons and using them effectively. What you don't want to do is overcomplicate your icons, right? You don't want to place an icon everywhere on your dashboard, because the goal of the dashboard is to present information to your end user, to help them answer questions and dive further into their data. So icons, if they are overused, overcomplicated, they can be very distracting. So you don't want to place an icon for every single filter or icon for every single header. All right, don't overcomplicate it. Here, as I mentioned, I placed the logo in the top right corner of the dashboard. So once you have your template, next you want to fill it in. You want to create each of those charts and those visualizations within Tableau or your tool of choice, and then you want to fill it in now that you have an outline of what this should look like. So here on the left-hand side, I've taken that wireframe that we built in Tableau, and on the right-hand side, I've replaced each of these boxes with the respective chart. So I filled everything in. I built all of these charts individually, and then I placed it on the dashboard. And it was easy to place these items on the dashboard because I knew exactly where they should be laid out, right? So here's another example of ways that in the business world that I've created dashboards and templates and then created the visualizations and filled it in. So left-hand side, you're looking at a template for an HR dashboard, an employee turnover dashboard, and I've gotten very specific with each of the chart types that should be here. And then on the right-hand side, I've placed in each of the worksheets. Here's an example of Balsamic, which is a wireframing tool that I've used to create a template, right? And then even though this is a picture, you know, it's not a Tableau template per se, I went to Tableau and I pretty much replicated it. But because I had an idea of exactly how I wanted to lay things out, it was easier to create it and lay it out in Tableau without having to start from scratch. And here's another example of a template that I created in Figma. So on the left-hand side is a template I made in Figma, and then I went to Tableau. I actually used this as a background image within Tableau, and I placed the various worksheets on top of this image here. So there are a lot of ways of creating templates out there. Just make sure that, you know, you're creating one to organize your thoughts with whatever tool that you please, whether it's Tableau, Balsamic, or Figma. And here's another example of a business dashboard that we laid out, created this one in Figma as well, and then placed the information in Tableau on top of it. So here are those template guidelines, those 6 template guidelines, right? But last but not least, reuse your templates, right? Never really start from scratch. And I do this personally as well as professionally. So if you have a template that works for you within your organization, continue to use that template over and over again. No need to reinvent the wheel. So here's an example on the left-hand side of a template that we've created internally. The dashboard that you see on the left looks at human resources, a human resource COVID-19 dashboard. And we've used that exact same template style to create a sales dashboard that you see on the right-hand side. So even though these are 2 very different departments, we're using the same look and feel without having to start from scratch. And essentially it speeds up our design process because we're working off of a visualization that we can just, you know, place new items in without having to create it from scratch. So layout, fill in, reuse. Next, you want to start to think about using art, right? So how can we use art to our advantage in these dashboards? Even with business dashboards, you can incorporate art. So using simple images and icons can take your dashboard from basic to visually appealing. And let's walk through those guidelines. So first, you want to make sure that you're selecting icons that are easy to recognize and communicate meaning. So if you look at the 3 icons that I have here, a house, an information icon, and a data source icon, off the top of your head, you probably know what some of these things are, right? Typically, a home icon that is used either on a website or any type of application means you're going back to the home page, right? It's easy to recognize. A lot of users know exactly what that means. The information icon means learn more information about something. And typically, a data source icon is about, you know, learning more about your data source or information about the data source in general, right? So you want to make sure that you're communicating, you're using icons that communicate meaning and are easy to recognize. So we go back to the example that we've been working with this entire time. Here on this dashboard, I've used 4 icons. For customers, I've used a person icon to identify with a customer or a person. I used a box icon to identify with orders that were shipped or orders that were placed. I used a sales tag to identify with the sale of an item. And I used a money bag to identify money that's left over, after the sales and our expenses. So here I'm using icons that users can easily recognize and communicate meaning. So next, you want to make sure that you're including labels or providing context for your icons. Typically, if I place an icon with a band, the band label explains it for me. So if I have a person next to a band that says customers, the word customers explains what the icon is. But if you have icons anywhere else on your dashboard that aren't associated with the band, you want to make sure that you're providing a label or additional context for them. So if you have a home icon on your band, on your dashboard, and you want your users to click on this home icon to go back to the main page, you want to explicitly tell your users to click to return to the main page. Never assume that your users know the type of interaction that they should have with your dashboard. And I think I've seen that a lot with a lot of developers and designers. They assume that users know to click here or hover here. Never have that assumption. Be very explicit and give them the details on what they need to do with your icons. Next, if you have the information icon, make sure you say hover for information about this dashboard. If you have the data source icon, make sure you're saying hover to view information on the data source. So here, as I mentioned first, if you have icons that are associated with bands, you don't necessarily need to further explain them, right? Customers explains customers, the box explains the orders, the sales tag explains sales, profit explains the money bag. However, if you have any type of other interaction on your dashboard, you want to explain what to do. So in this example here, I wanted the users to click on the Tableau conference homepage logo and go to the homepage of the Tableau conference, right? Looking at the logo by itself, if I didn't have this line here that says click to view conference homepage, then your end user wouldn't know to go click on it to go to the Tableau conference homepage, right? So you want to explicitly tell your users to click to view the conference homepage. If you don't want to add like a long line of text like I did here, another option is to maybe have like a clicker icon, something that you can bring into a tooltip or a worksheet in Tableau. And when they hover over that clicker icon, it's going to say click to view conference homepage. Either option is indicating that there is some sort of interaction that you're going to have with this Tableau conference logo. Next, you want to make sure that you're using simple icons, right? You don't need to get very creative. We can have a simple house. We don't need to have a house with 2 stories that has a nice door handle and boxes for the window, right? You don't need that. You want to make sure that your icons are very simple so that, as I mentioned earlier, they're not taken away from your visualization. So in this example, I've used some rather simple icons. I used a basic customer, a basic box, a basic sales tag, a basic money bag. It's not very intricate, right? What you didn't see me do was, use a customer that has a nice beard and a nice bun. I didn't use this nice box here that has like the tape and whatnot. I didn't use this, I don't even know what this is, but this sales clipboard, it looks like. And I didn't use a manager with a store with a money bag outside of it. You want to make sure you're using simple icons, nothing too creative. I think on this dashboard, these icons are a little distracting, right? And the smaller they are, the harder they are to tell exactly what's going on with them. So make sure you're incorporating icons, especially with your business dashboards, that don't take away from the message that's intended. Next, you want to make sure you're keeping styles consistent and cohesive. So if you look at the first line of icons here, we have a nice shaded house. We have a solid house. We have a solid information icon. You have a solid data source. But if you look on the left-hand side, your eye is probably immediately drawn to the data source icon. It's different from the other 2, right? And then on the last line, you have a silhouette for an information icon. It sticks out from the other 2. So if you're using icons, multiple icons in your dashboard, you want to make sure that they're consistent and cohesive in style. So here, if I were to place a shaded customer icon on here, you look at this, and you're reading across on the band area, your eye is immediately drawn to the darker shaded customer icon. It takes away from maybe even the numbers that are being placed up there. So you want to make sure that you're using icons that are consistent and cohesive in style so that everything is in unison. Next, you want to make sure that you're sticking to your dashboard theme and using the color scheme. So for this entire dashboard, our main color was purple, gray, and white, right? So you will not see me place a blue, a red, or a green icon on there because those just weren't colors that were on our dashboard. So you want to make sure that you're using colors efficiently and that they're sticking with the overall color scheme of the dashboard. So here, even though the company colors for Tableau, for the Tableau conference has a green associated with it, this blue-green, there's no need to use it on your dashboard if your dashboard doesn't have those colors already in it. So make sure that you're sticking with the colors that are already on your dashboard. Your icon should not be a different color than what's already on your dashboard. And last but not least, you want to make sure you're using icons that reduce icon graphic details. So this kind of goes hand in hand with keeping it simple, nothing too creative. So in this example, icon graphic details are basically the additional lines that you see within an icon, right? So here we have a lot of lines for the house icon that represent the front yard, the chimney, the window, and the attic. And down below with the information icon, we have a lot of lines that represent the ins and outs of the computer, the magnifying glass, as well as the eye associated with information. So that's a lot of icon graphic detail. And what happens is that when you place that on a dashboard and you have like small icons, these details are hard to see. Sometimes they may even appear very blurry. So it's better to be on the safe side and use less icon graphic details than to have a nice icon that has a lot of graphic details and it's harder for your end users to interpret what it is. So in this example here, even though these are solid, these are silhouette icons and they're all consistent, there's a lot of detail that's associated with them. There's a lot of lines here and it's very distracting. And on the dashboard, I don't know if you all can tell, but these are a little blurry, and they're blurry because of the fact that they have so many lines associated with them, right? The pixels aren't picking up perfectly. So you want to make sure that your icons do not have a lot of icon graphic details associated with them. So yes, you can use icons for business dashboards, and we just saw an example, and I'll show you a couple more where I use icons in business dashboards. So here we're going back to the employee turnover dashboard. In the top area is typically where I place icons. You see I have 3 icons associated with the employee turnover, the turnover rate percentage, and then the average years that a person was with the company for. So they're all consistent in color. So we've aligned with the company colors. Our Lovelytics colors are green and blue. We've used icons that were all shaded, not too much detail associated with them, and they're large enough so that an end user can see exactly what they are. In this example here, I have 3 icons that I'm using. They're black on the left-hand side because it would be very difficult for you to see a white icon that's here on the white PowerPoint background. So either way, these are just the black versions of those icons. But as you could tell, they're easy to understand. They're easy to identify with. They do not have a lot of graphic detail associated with them, and they're all shaded, right? So that's another example of how you can use icons in a business dashboard. Here's another example, website analysis, right? So we're using 3 icons at the top. The dashboard looks good without them, but it looks even better with them, I think, just to have some icons to add some charm or some flavor to your dashboard, especially in the band area. And here's another example. And the reason I like this example is because there are 2 types of icons on here. So we have our silhouette icons at the top that are within our band areas. And then we have icons for each of the social platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And the bands that we have at the very top of the dashboard, even though they're silhouettes, they're all consistent in style, right? I don't have a thumbs up icon as a shaded icon, right? So all of the ones that are associated with the band are all silhouettes. And then when you get to the social platforms, pay attention to all of them having a very similar look and feel. So they didn't necessarily need to be silhouettes as well, but they're all shaded and they all have the same type of look and feel based off of how they're grouped. So our bands are grouped together, our social media platforms are grouped together, and their icons kind of fall into each of those buckets and look very similar in style. So this is another example of how to use icons in a business dashboard. So where can you get icons from? My top 3 sites, flaticon.com allows you to customize icons for free. So you just have to sign up for a free account. You can also get premium icons as well. what I typically have used for many years, their free account. I just recently purchased a premium version just for one icon that I wanted. But it's a very good site. It's probably my favorite. These two icons that you see on the visualization to the right, those weren't the original colors of them. I changed the colors to match the theme of my dashboard. So I love flaticon.com. The Noun Project is another good one if you're looking for solid icons. I like solid and silhouette icons. And then Icons 8 is another good site. So here are the icon and art guidelines. So now let's talk about colors and how do we choose colors that really matter. So first, when you're selecting colors, you want to make sure that you're using brand colors. You want to start with that and let them form the basis of your dashboard. So in this example, I've used the brand colors to form the structure of the visualization, right? I've used the brand colors to highlight the dashboard title area. I've used it in all of the section headers. I've used it for a lot of the fonts. So you want to make sure that you're allowing your brand colors to form the basis of your visualization. In this example, I've used our brand colors, which are from the Lovelytics logo, to form the basis of this visualization. So as you can see, my dashboard title is the Lovelytics blue. My icons are the Lovelytics green. My band numbers are the Lovelytics blue. My titles for each of my worksheets are also the Lovelytics blue. So allowing your brand colors to form the basis of your visualization. In this example, the Venus Marketing logo that you see in the top right-hand corner of this dashboard form the basis of the colors for this. So here, even though this logo has a lot of colors, I've selected 2 colors and allowed it to form the basis of this visualization. So the title area is the navy blue, the band area is the navy blue, and then everything else is focused on the orange and the white. So using your brand colors again to form the basis of your visualization. Next, you want to make sure that you're getting inspiration from art and other visuals. I would be lying if I said I always design from scratch. A lot of times I go to the internet, particularly Google, for a lot of inspiration. And I'll show you what I type in, right? So if I have a use case for a particular client that's in a certain industry and they want a visualization, I simply go to Google first and I'll type in that industry and then I'll place the word infographic at the end of it. So in this example, I wanted to create a visualization for a healthcare within the healthcare sector. So I went to Google, I typed in healthcare infographic. And this was the visualization that returned. And I really like this visualization because I like the color and the layout of it. I like the red and the green that you see here. I like the way that they outline their numbers at the top with those boxes. So there were some things that I liked about this. And this is an example of starting from inspiration or getting inspiration from online and using it as the basis of your visualization. So I took that visualization, I took some of the colors from it, I took the structure that you see from it as well, and I created the visualization that you see on the right-hand side. So as you can see, I've used like the same boxes up top with the same boxes on the right-hand side for mine. So where it says 7 million and number 1 and what is cardiovascular disease, it kind of resembles the exact same look and feel of the boxes that you see on the viz on the left. So this is an example of going to Google, finding inspiration, and then creating your visualization based off of it. There's another example that I did where we were creating a visualization for a client and we wanted to look at attendance for a particular game, right? And if you imagine you're going to a game that's played like in a basketball arena, you would want to lay it out in like an arena format. So what are all of the sections and whatnot? So I went to Tableau first and I typed in game day attendance, and the visualization that sparked my interest was the one that was made on the right-hand side by Decisive Data. And what I liked about it was the section layout that they have here. And then I like the game details that you can select on the left-hand side. So I took this visualization and I was able to transform it and create the visualization that you see on the right-hand side. So this is another example of going not to Google, but this time to Tableau Public to find a visualization that inspires you and then use it as the basis for your own visualization. And then here's another example of a modern dashboard that I was trying to create. And I found the example that you see on the left-hand side on dribble.com. That's another site, or Pinterest is another site where you can look for inspiration. And I took bits and pieces of that visualization and I created the one that you see on the right-hand side. So the same band area, the layout of the charts is pretty much the same, as well as the details, the order details that you see down below. So it's another example of using a website, finding inspiration, and then creating your visualization off of it. So next, you want to make sure that when you're incorporating colors, that you're limiting the number of colors in your visualization to 2. I typically do not use more than 2 colors, 2 dominant colors in my visualization. So in this example, our dominant color is the purple, the dark purple. By dominant, I mean anything that isn't like gray, white, typically black sometimes, or blue. Any neutral color, I don't consider that a dominant color. Anything else to me is a dominant color. In this example, our dominant color here is purple. Everything else is gray and white. In this example here, even though there are a series of colors I could have picked, there are only 2 dominant colors, the blue and the orange. Everything else is white. What you didn't see me do was incorporate every single color from the color palette of the company, right? There's no need to use every single color, especially if each of these metrics are related. So in this example, everything is related to sales. So there's no need for me to color each of these sales charts differently. They're all sales, so keep sales the same color. Make sure you're keeping your metrics the same colors throughout your visualization. Make sure you're creating accessible color schemes and testing them out as well. So in this example on the left-hand side, I took this image and I placed it into a color blindness simulator just to make sure that anyone that has some form of a color deficiency or vision deficiency could still see what I needed them to see. The goal here was that I needed them to see the shading of the segment chart in the top right, as well as the shading on the map. And no matter what the color deficiency is, that can still be seen here, right? So you can see it for a red week, green week, blue week, red blind, green blind, and blue blind. And the site for that is colorblindness.com, and it's the color blindness simulator. In this example, we're looking at a black background and we have red print on top of it. So I wanted to make sure that anybody with some form of a color deficiency could see that as well. And as you can see, in each of the cases, you can still see exactly what I wanted you to see. And pretty much what I wanted the end user to be able to tell are the different shades on the heat map, as well as the shades on the line chart. So if you're using shading on your dashboard, long story short, just make sure that you're testing that color scheme and that whatever color deficiency a person might have, they can still see whatever your intention was with color. So what you don't want to do is use like these red and green palettes, because those are very hard to see when a person has a color deficiency. It's hard to differentiate, especially with like green blind and red blind, sometimes with the difference between red and green in general. So you want to stay away from your red and green colors. And I think this is a point that a lot of people are hearing more and more. So make sure that you are actually listening to that, even though you might like those colors, make sure you're actually considering that before you use red and green again in the dashboard. So you also want to make sure you're using color purposefully and for reinforcement. So in this example, we're using color purposefully. The purple shade that you see here is only used to highlight when necessary. So I'm not using purple everywhere, especially not even for the bar chart. I'm only using it when I'm trying to highlight something. In this example, we're using color for reinforcement. It's an investment performance dashboard that we've created. And for reinforcement, I'm using a blue bar. So everywhere you see this blue bar, it's indicating that that is the max value. That's the highest value. So your eye is automatically drawn to this blue bar compared to the others. Here we're using color purposefully because in this dashboard, the blue is representative of one ticker and then the gray is representative of another ticker. So we've kept those same colors throughout so that a user knows the difference between the two tickers that they're comparing. In this example, everywhere that you see blue, it's representative of employees who are at risk. So we've made sure that we've highlighted blue on each of these bars and on the map to represent those employees in particular. So this is an example of using color purposefully. Last but not least, for colors, if you are stuck, design in grayscale first and then add color to highlight. So I'll walk you all through that one. Here's an example of the dashboard that we've created that is designed in grayscale. I have no color associated with it. I created the charts and I placed it in the template and I didn't add color to it. So let's start adding some color to it. The first thing I typically do is I choose colors for the title, the filter, and the band area. So typically, if I shade the title area, I do not have a border around the filters. I will then have a border around my band area. Or I'll go with a line underneath the title area and a border around the filters. I try not to put borders next to each other, meaning you won't see me have another border around the filters because I think that's just way too many borders. So I try to even out the space between my borders. Next, you want to look at each of your charts individually and then determine if you want to highlight anything. So let's start by looking at our charts for the sales per region area. For our line chart, we don't really need to highlight anything. For our text table, we don't really need to highlight anything either. But for the segment table, it would be neat to see which segment and region have the highest sales automatically. So there's where we would add color to that to now highlight that the West consumer region has the highest sales. Next, if we go down to our sales per state, there are a lot of dots there. So we will try to use color to differentiate the sales per state instead of using dots. So here's where I'm adding color to that map, using it strategically to highlight which states have the highest sales. And it's easier to see than placing a bunch of dots on a map. And then last but not least, this bar chart that you see on the right-hand side, that dark black or that black in general grabs your attention rather quickly. And if we remember the priority and the order of these, it was very important. So we don't need our user's eye to automatically be drawn to the bottom right-hand corner of the viz just because this chart is black. So I will go ahead and make it a neutral color. That way it blends in with the overall look and feel of the dashboard and that your users are reading, top to bottom, left to right. Then you add some final touches, test various shadings for your borders and your font colors. So I'll walk you through that. So here's an example that I see a lot. I see a lot of people, shade each of these section headers, your title headers, and I don't think that you should do this. I think this is an absolute no-no. One, because it's very distracting, right? It's overpowering and it just takes away from the overall white space and the look and feel of the dashboard. I also see people add borders to their title areas, and I think this is a no-no as well, right? If you design your information to a grid correctly, then you won't have to worry about shading it, right? It'll already have that natural alignment for it, and you won't need to add the shading or the border. So I personally think that if you are going to shade, use lighter shadings, neutral tones, nothing that's too distracting, or don't shade at all, right? There's no need to shade these headers. So here are my color guidelines. So now let's talk about fonts, our last topic. So when you're selecting fonts, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're sticking to one legible font. In this dashboard, even though we've used one font, it's not a very legible font in the dashboard. It's hard to see. It's very bold. It's overpowering. So make sure that whenever you're picking your font, even if it's one font, you want to make sure that it's legible. I typically just stick with the Tableau font. It's the easiest font for me to use. Next, you don't want any more than 4 sizes of that font type. And I break those 4 sizes down by the dashboard title, the worksheet title, the chart header, and then the worksheet pane / the additional text area. So the dashboard that you see here, our dashboard title, the size of it is a size 22. Our worksheet titles, they're all size 14. Our chart headers, which are the things that say the region names, those are size 9. And then our worksheets and additional text, so these areas that you see here, and the labels for the bars, those are size 9 as well. So if you see up top, this is typically how I size each of those areas. Next, you want to avoid custom fonts if possible. On the left-hand side, the visualization that was created used a native Mac font. However, when you take some of these native fonts or these custom fonts and you upload them to Tableau Public, Tableau Server, or Tableau Online, they are going to adjust because that particular font is not available on Tableau Online or you haven't uploaded it to Tableau Server yet. So you want to make sure that you're avoiding custom fonts if possible. Here's a list of fonts for you if you're looking for fonts that are compatible with Tableau Online or Tableau Public. I typically use just Tableau Book, or I'll use Arial, or what's another one? Roboto, however you say that, or Georgia. Those are some good fonts that I use. Next, you want to make sure that you're being strategic with your fonts and background colors. I use a tool called accessiblecolors.com to test any font color that I've placed on a background. So in this example, you see on the left-hand side, we have a dark background, and the color fonts that we have on the front side of it are the yellow as well as the blue for the positive and the negative change. So I wanted to make sure that users can see the contrast between the background and the font rather quickly, and make sure that I'm aligning with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So I've taken the text color that you see, the yellow, and I plugged it in. I plugged in the font weight here. I plugged in the background color, and it lets me know that it's compliant, right? So you need to at least have a 4.5 contrast ratio between your text and your background color, and this one passes. If I were to darken that yellow just a little bit, you can see here that it does not pass, it fails. And what's neat about this tool is that it provides you with two changes that you could make to either the background color itself or the text color to make it compliant, right? So here it's telling me to either change the background or to change the text color to these hex codes, and it'll be compliant. Here's another example. I have this light blue with a gray background, and blue with any type of background is always a little hard to see in terms of contrast. So I wanted to make sure I tested that out as well. So I plugged in all of that information and it passed. In this example here, if I were to lighten up that background just a little bit, it does not pass. That blue is hard to see, especially when you get to the paragraphs. That blue is hard to see on that gray background. So you want to make sure that you're testing any type of colors that you have on your background. So the contrast between your background and your text. Next, you want to make sure that you're using font strategically and using it to bold your text or emphasize your text. So in this example, we've used we've used red and a bold color to emphasize what we want our users to pick up on in this paragraph. So typically if I have a paragraph on a dashboard, I don't expect my users to read the entire paragraph, because sometimes when I'm reading, I won't even read a whole paragraph. You will want to use color to highlight what your users' eyes should be drawn to. So if you look at this, your eyes are drawn to the 2015, the 50,000, the 55% of African-American HBCU graduates. Your eyes are drawn to those things. In this example here, if I were to take away that color on the left-hand side, there isn't information that sticks out, and the risk of having your users either read everything or not read anything at all, versus on the right hand side, if you simply just bold or emphasize some items in your paragraph, your users' eyes are automatically drawn to it. And last but not least, you want to align left with any type of information on your dashboard. You want to stay away from center and right alignment. You only want to right align if you are doing it for design purposes like a template. And you only want to center align if it's just small information like small text, a band label or something. That's the only time you typically want to align in the center. So in this example here that we've created, we have a paragraph that speaks about the visualization itself. We made sure that we aligned it left because it's a paragraph, and you want your users have a beginning point of that paragraph that they can read, that they can their eyes can just point to. And it's just easier for them to consume this paragraph. Versus if we were to center align it, it's hard for the user to focus on where the line ends and where it begins as they read. So those are my font guidelines. So to summarize everything that we talked about today, you want to start with your audience and understand their requirements. From there, you want to build your template and add your view. So create your charts and fill it in. You want to incorporate design elements that are going to enhance your story. And last but not least, you want to add color strategically, icons for charm, and you want to use the rule of 4 when selecting fonts. Anyone can be a designer. It's not something you're born with. It's not something exclusive to a select few. All it takes is practice while keeping a few design secrets in mind. And this is the same model that I use whenever I'm creating a new dashboard, and the same model that has taken me on my journey the past 10 years in creating visualizations. So that's all I have for you today, folks. Once again, Chantilly Jaggernauth. You can reach me at chantilly.jaggernauth@lovelytics.com. My Twitter handle is @shanjag. And if you're looking for more information on design secrets, examples, webinars, the recording will be posted on the www.designsecretsforanondesigner.com. And you can also go there to download that dashboard requirements document that I shared with you all earlier today. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
That was awesome. Thank you. We just have a few questions that I think we can knock out here just with the time we have left. So Chantilly, can you remind everybody, where do you find some of those free templates that you tend to go back to?
I use dribble.com, dribble as like dribble a basketball. It is as spell it as is. I use Pinterest as well. I go to Google and I'll type in the industry and then place the word infographic at the end of it. And then I also go to the Tableau public gallery as well.
Awesome. And for icons, where do you, for those in particular?
For icons, I go to flaticons.com. I can pull it up here. I go to the nounproject.com. That's another one. And icons 8.
Cool. And then let's see. How do I learn more about using the images as backgrounds and kind of getting those round edges that you've shown on some of your previous webinars as well?
We, our past 2 webinars that we've done, they've been technical, and I've walked through exactly how to create those, the sites that you can go to create them. And I actually do a tutorial on how to create them. So I would go to designsecretsforanondesigner.com and check out the last 2 blog posts that are on there. And it has the tutorial on creating those rounded images.
Cool. And then for importing those particular icons into Tableau, where do you store those in Tableau Desktop again?
So those are, if you're bringing them just onto your dashboard as an image, then you do a dashboard image object, versus if you're looking to incorporate icons in a worksheet as a mark, then you can go to your Tableau repository, and I'm navigating to it right now. It's usually in your documents folder. And then you click there and you select shapes. And within shapes, as you can see, I have a lot more shape folders than what came with Tableau. And that's because you can create your own shapes folder. And here you can add in your own icons.
Excellent. And just as a reminder, we did record this today, so you will definitely find it on Chantilly's blog. And we will also send out a link later on once Zoom gives us the recording back. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in, supporting us. We will be coming out with more content, so appreciate everyone following along, and we will have more to present here in the next couple of weeks. Thanks everybody. You have a great rest of the day, and take care.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.